It all began with chickens. Lots of chickens. A revolution in Britain's eating habits was to lead to a revolution in politics. In 1953, an old Etonian farmer called Anthony Fisher was looking for new ideas.
He took the opportunity to go to America, where he was introduced to factory farming of chicken in sheds, not in cages. And he brought this idea back to the UK.
Fisher introduced intensive battery chicken farming to Britain. The humble chicken was about to lose its freedom.
Chicken was something you ate on Sundays if you were lucky, and as everyone will now know, chicken is probably the cheapest meat you can eat, and that was really due to him.
So Fisher put a chicken in every pot and a fortune in his pocket. But curiously, he wanted to turn his money into ideas and change the direction of Britain's political life. Britain had fought a war for freedom against the totalitarian menace of Nazi Germany. Fisher's personal view was that the country was still in peril. His brother had died fighting in the Battle of Britain. Now Fisher wanted Britain to be a land worth dying for. The war had been won, but fear of totalitarianism lingered on. The Soviet Union was seen as a threat by all sorts of people. George Orwell first described its menace in Animal Farm, and down on his farm, Anthony Fisher worried about the future.
He just adored his younger brother. Seeing his brother in his mind's eye, seeing that this was happening to other people all over the world at that very moment under communism, and knowing that he could do something about it, and that was what he did.
Fisher didn't share in post-war euphoria. In 1945, the Labour Party was elected by a landslide vote, a vote for a brave new world that would make the unemployment of the 1930s impossible and banish hardship for everyone in need.
Disease. The evil of disease must be overthrown. The voluntary hospital and the expensive nursing home are not enough to maintain this nation in good health.
Most young people immediately after the war had seen their parents suffer from unemployment. They may have had a job, but it was always threatened. Often they would have spent a long time between jobs trying to find another one. Sometimes they simply couldn't find another one. So the experience of unemployment wasn't just a theoretical experience. It wasn't something you read about in books. And so you got this passionate desire on the part of people who were emerging from the war to make sure that there would not be mass unemployment. It was hard to describe how grim it was.
Idleness. There must be no mass unemployment. The giant evil of only yesterday.
The new government had radical ideas. It nationalised key industry and introduced the welfare state and the National Health Service. The intention was that society should care for us from the cradle to the grave.
The nurse told me I could now apply for my maternity benefit.
Good.
And as it amounts to 36 shillings a week for 13 weeks, well, it's not to be sneezed at.
That nurse sounds a pretty nice person.
And John?
Yes?
She hopes it's a boy.
You've got the welfare state established. So there was a move towards a socialised economy. And then, of course, although Nazi Germany had been defeated, there was Soviet Russia. And communism was very far from defeated. And so you could feel you were living in a world in which liberal values were increasingly endangered.
To an individualist like Fisher, the new government's planning and control seemed like a threat to personal freedom.
14-year-old Willie Ferguson, youngest worker at Ashington, unveiled the commemorative tablet.
But instead of just railing against the government, Fisher decided to act.
It's only very small groups of people who stand out against any consensus. People who are different in some way. They may be cranks, they may be geniuses. They don't accept what the majority accept. And Fisher was one of those people. I'm not saying he was right, but he was exceptional.
Fisher was influenced by a little-known Austrian economist called Friedrich von Hayek, who went out on a limb to warn that we were all doomed if we didn't watch out.
I have come to regard the writing of this book as a duty I must not evade. When we look to Nazi Germany, the gulf which separates us seems so immense that nothing that happens there can possess relevance for any possible development in this country. But let us not forget that 15 years ago, the possibility of such a thing happening in Germany would have appeared just as fantastic.
The road to serfdom argued that by embracing socialist ideas, Britain was unwittingly sliding towards totalitarianism. Freedom could only be assured by capitalism.
And my father read it, and he obviously thought, he has put into words what I think and know. This man knows really the answers.
For some, it was a potent message. As Enoch Powell's former secretary recalls,
I remember Hayek telling me that the Brits thought you only had totalitarian dangers if people wore funny uniforms and funny salutes. And he said they don't understand that a man in a tweed suit can be as vicious as any Gestapo officer.
Hayek saw the social and economic planning brought in during the war as the thin end of a dangerous wedge. Personal freedom would be eroded until people were enslaved.
It's rather like today when the government has a little security, you know, in the name of security, it just curtails liberty a little bit. And everyone says, well, you know, of course it doesn't curtail liberty by very much. And then the next thing curtails it just a little bit more because there are some unintended consequences of the first. And so you get a gradual erosion, which no one is in favour of. Everyone proclaims their devotion to liberty all this time. But you get this erosion.
But the idea that freedom could be eroded by stealth fell on stony ground in Britain. Hayek's message was generally thought to be sensationalist or wrong-headed.
The road to serfdom was ignored in Britain, ignored much more than in the United States, where I think it was taken more seriously.
The message did percolate into odd corners, like Anthony Fisher's farm, and a lab in Oxford University, where it acted like alchemy and helped to turn chemistry student Margaret Roberts into a politician. Right or wrong, many years later, the road to serfdom did become a standard text for the blue revolutionaries in our story. But in the beginning, state intervention ruled the political roost.
Providing hospital and specialist services, medicines, drugs and appliances, care of the teeth and eyes, maternity services.
Let's go forward into this fight in the spirit of William Blake. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall the sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land.
Von Hayek was employed at the London School of Economics, where he'd been since 1931. When Fisher discovered this, he wasted no time in asking to meet him. And so it was that Fisher met von Hayek and explained that he planned to go into politics to turn things around. Von Hayek's response was not what he expected.
Hayek said to him, don't go into politics. You have to alter public opinion. It'll take a long time. You do it through the intellectuals, the second-hand dealers in ideas.
Von Hayek took Fisher under his wing and introduced him to his own private thinkers' club in Switzerland.
Anthony Fisher was also initiated into liberal market thinking through the Mont Pelerin Society, which was started by Hayek in order to counter what he saw as the drift towards socialism and collectivism. And this was a small group of liberal-minded economists, and they met once a year in Switzerland and kept alive the flame of, as he saw it, of freedom, economic freedom and political freedom. And a lot of the people who made an impact in the 60s, 70s, and later had their initiation through the Mont Pelerin Society.